For over 400 years, millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homes, torn from their families, and sold into slavery across the Americas. The transatlantic slave trade enriched nations, built empires, and left scars that continue to shape the modern world. Today, a growing movement is asking a simple yet profoundly complex question: should the descendants of enslaved people receive reparations? This video dives deep into one of the most important conversations of our time. The transatlantic slave trade reshaped entire continents. In the Americas, enslaved labor built unimaginable wealth that fueled nations, while the descendants of those enslaved were often left marginalized and impoverished. As one historian puts it, slavery wasn't just about unpaid labor. It was about extraction, social destruction, and systemic oppression that lasted long after emancipation. Its effects are still visible today in the staggering economic inequality and racial disparities we see around the world. The numbers do unlift the wealth gap between the descendants of the enslaved and those who benefited from the system is a direct legacy of this brutal history. But the idea of reparations isn't new. In the aftermath of slavery, newly freed people and activists immediately called for compensation, land, and justice. You've probably heard of the promise of 40 acres and a mule in the United States. That promise was systematically broken, setting the stage for centuries of economic hardship. Across the Atlantic, Caribbean nations also began demanding recognition for the wealth extracted during colonial rule. These early calls for justice laid the foundation for today's international reparations movements, proving this isn't a modern trend, but a long, persistent fight for what is right. In recent decades, these calls have grown louder and more organized. Caribbean nations, led by CARICOM, are demanding financial aid, debt relief, and a formal acknowledgement from former colonial powers. They argue that reparations are about justice, development, and healing, not charity, but a recognition of what was stolen. Meanwhile, in the United States, the conversation is happening at both the national and local levels. Cities like Evanston, Illinois, are even experimenting with local reparations programs, funding community projects, and housing assistance. It's a tangible sign that the debate is shifting from if to how. Of course, the issue remains highly controversial. Supporters see reparations as a moral and economic imperative, a way to begin correcting centuries of injustice. They point out that the wealth of nations like Britain, France, and the United States was literally built on the backs of their ancestors. Opponents, however, raise practical questions. How do you determine who receives compensation? Is it fair to hold today's generation responsible for the crimes of the past? These are tough questions, but the debate is forcing us to confront them. Some also argue that symbolic gestures, like official apologies, museums, and educational programs, can play a powerful role in acknowledging historical truths, even without financial payments. But what does this mean for people today? Across the world, descendants of the enslaved continue to feel the weight of this history in their daily lives, in underfunded schools, fewer opportunities, and systemic barriers. For them, reparations aren't just about money. They represent recognition, an apology for an immeasurable crime, and a chance to build a more equitable future. These personal stories remind us that this debate is about justice, identity, and the opportunity to finally heal wounds that have been left open for far too long. So where do we go from here? Can nations and societies truly reckon with this dark chapter of history? The conversation around reparations signals a major shift toward accountability, whether it takes the form of financial payments, structural investments, or symbolic acts. The real goal is to confront a history that has shaped our modern world and ensure its injustices are never forgotten or repeated. History isn't just the past. It's the legacy we all inherit. As this debate continues, it forces us to face a simple truth: justice unaddressed will echo for centuries. Thank you for watching. If this video made you think, please like, subscribe, and share it to keep this important conversation going.